Let me scoot over. Hey guys, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. This is going to be a little bit of an Arsenal news show and a reaction to what happened yesterday. So make sure you guys are liking this video and subscribing to the channel and getting into the comment section and letting me know what you guys are thinking and feeling. We are not even it's not even 24 hours obviously since we played our game, and I am still so excited. Just from the adrenaline of winning a game that we didn't feel like we were going to win. And so now, upon a little bit of reflection and stepping back a little bit, I think I can talk about some of the performances a little bit differently. If you guys were a part of the player ratings yesterday, I had a very difficult time getting my thoughts together because everything happened so quickly. The last 30 minutes were like a blur to me because it was just like everything was happening so fast. And so, yeah, I haven't rewatched the entire game, but I have rewatched like the last 10 minutes a couple of times. And I'm like, okay, I know what I'm feeling. I know what I'm feeling. So, again, make sure you guys are liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and getting into the chat. Let me just pull some things up really quick because we're going to go ahead and get into the nitty gritty. And if you guys watch this on playback, I know this is like a weird time for me to be going live, but I just thought since I usually do a pre-recorded something at this time, I would just go live because I was available or like I was awake. And so, yeah, if you're watching this on playback, this is just a typical Arsenal news show. Darren says, "Morning, everyone. Good morning to you as well." It is so early here. It's like 2 a.m. In LA. So, yeah, you guys know I love you guys so much. And that's why I'm here chit-chatting about this game. But either way, like I am just so like I still cannot believe that we won that game. Listen, so let's go ahead and jump into it. Not sure what happened there with my screen. Whatever. Every time I try to do something, it just messes up. Yeah, here we go. So we have to talk about two performances that I think they're different, but they're so impactful. One of them being Kai Havertz and the other one being Declan Rice. Declan Rice will get a lot of the plaudits and the highlights and all that kind of stuff because he won us the game. He got the game-winning goal. But I do think that Kai Havertz was actually the most impactful throughout the entire 90 minutes in terms of like what he was doing on the ball, his intention, things like that. And these are two major summer signings for Arsenal. As big of a signing as Declan Rice was, you can argue that buying Kai Havertz for 65 million is just as risky just because it's like you don't know what this guy is going to be like. He's been at Chelsea for 3 years. He's playing a position that we're not sure that's really his position. And listen, all I wanted to see from Kai Havertz was for him to get the ball, drive forward, and actually like make things happen. And in this game, he did that. One of the things I really liked about his game against Luton was carrying the ball and driving through the lines. We haven't really had somebody that does that on a regular basis. Like Xhaka was not really like a ball carrier. Like he didn't get the ball and dribble forward through the lines. Kai definitely does that. And it's like a breath of fresh air because sometimes you just need to carry the ball through. And I think he does a really good job at winning first balls, winning second balls, and also ghosting and anticipating touches in the box. His anticipation for Gabriel Jesus's like pass into him for his goal to me is just like that is what Kai Havertz is all about. He is going to play so well off of Gabriel Jesus because that combination is going to be so lethal and I think so fruitful for Arsenal the longer that they play with each other, because if their connection is like this so far, just think what it'll be like in a couple of months, right? I thought his performance was so good, and I get that like he's still not everybody's 100% cup of tea. I get that people are still like, okay, what is he going to offer? Like, was this the right signing? But we are definitely seeing signs of life with Kai Havertz now. We're definitely seeing somebody that is gaining some confidence. We're seeing somebody that's finding his own, and we're starting to see a lot more balance in that midfield. In the beginning, when we first started playing with Declan Rice, Kai Havertz, and Odegaard, it didn't really feel like a balanced midfield because Kai Havertz wasn't involved in build-up, couldn't really figure out what his role was there. now you can see what his role is. As long as he's involved, getting on the ball, making things happen, he's a very useful player. And he's he's an awkward player to play against. He's 6'4", he's strong, he's fast, his movement is great. And so we're getting to the point now where I think with Kai Havertz that it's like, okay, now that you have some confidence, like I want to see him start against Aston Villa. I think he deserves to start against Villa. It's going to be a difficult away game, so I'm loving it. Like I'm definitely loving his performance so far. Um Angel says great goal from Rice, but let's be real, Barkley was the best midfielder on the pitch. Raya was terrible. Yeah, he can be the best one on the pitch for them, but like, does that mean that Rice and Kai Havertz and Odegaard were not good? No. You can have another player have a good game amongst your players having good games as well. So, Ross Barkley having a good game doesn't mean that Kai Havertz and Rice did not. Raya was terrible, but like, are we going to really sit here and act like Kai Havertz wasn't really good in that game? Let's be so serious right now. Here to there says, agreed, Jess. Arteta has literally totally changed our system for him, sacrificing Odegaard and Nelly for him. Kai has to keep scoring like this. I don't think he's totally sacrificing Odegaard, to be honest. And I don't know if he's totally sacrificing Martinelli. Martinelli scored yesterday. Odegaard is doing different things from deeper. So I don't necessarily feel like he's sacrificing the entire system for Kai Havertz. I think the system has changed and the dynamics are different now. So Odegaard was always going to drop into a deeper role. He is more of a number 8 than a number 10 now. And I think being deeper actually really suits him. He still gets goals. He still gets assists. He still gets those things. So yeah, I don't think he necessarily was sacrificed. I don't think he sacrificed everything for Kai, but um Kai is playing well. I think some people are like, well, he has to keep playing like this because how about we just say like he had a good game? I know that there's a sour taste in some people's mouths, but like it's okay to say that somebody played well. Michael says if he keeps performing like this, we found our left 8. I agree. Eugene says we have played 20 games. We can't continue debating on who should be the number 1 goalkeeper for Arsenal. Raya is the number 1 goalkeeper, but it doesn't mean he won't make mistakes. I don't think people are debating it. I don't think the Raya thing is a debate. I think we're at the point now where it's not if, it's when Ramsdale leaves. And we're at the point, it's like, is Raya going to be able to step up and be the type of goalkeeper that's going to help us win a title? Or is he going to be, a liability, back there? He's making a lot of mistakes on a frequent basis. And so I don't necessarily I feel like the media continues to make it a debate, but it's not. Arteta's made it very clear who his number 1 goalkeeper is. The problem is that other goalkeeper is still around. And as long as Ramsdale is around, it's going to be really difficult, I think, for this conversation to go away. We can have conversations on whether or not Raya played well, but the conversation around whether or not Raya did well or not is always underpinned by, well, what about Ramsdale? What Ramsdale should get a chance, blah, blah, blah. Every time Ramsdale comes back in, he's poor, So I wish Arteta would have just moved Ramsdale on in the summer if he was going to do this thing with Raya so that the conversation just could be over. You know what I mean? Tyro says, do you think Nketiah not coming on was Arteta's response to his last 15-minute cameo? I hope so, because Nketiah's 15-minute cameo against Wolves was terrible. It's like his body language was off. The pressing wasn't there. He wasn't winning his duels. He wasn't holding the ball up. He wasn't doing anything. And I don't think Eddie Nketiah would have done anything in that game to help us win it. To be honest, I think, Jesus is showing levels here, like with his play. And so, Trossard is coming off of the bench first, is like the first guy off the bench to help us, win games or whatever. So yeah, Eddie should naturally drop down the pecking order. Like he's not as good of a player as the rest of our attackers. He's, him and Reece Nelson are down right at the bottom, and that's not like a slide on them. I think it's just the reality, So I don't really, if Nketiah had come on, I would have been really surprised because he's not going to help us do anything in that circumstance. Like Arteta made the right decisions there, So if it was a response to Eddie's cameo, then that makes sense because he was poor against Wolves. Like when he doesn't start, it's almost like he has a chip on his shoulder, and it's like it's not a good chip on your shoulder where it makes you score goals when you get out there. It's like, I'm just going to walk around, Michael says, to be fair, we didn't really need attacking subs. Our front 3 were on fire. I think that's the interesting thing as well. Like a lot of the conversation, I felt like people were making it seem like everybody was poor on the day, which I actually think that like Raya's performance really did a number on everybody else's perceived performance. I thought our attackers were all very good, and I thought our midfield was actually pretty good. I think Luton did their what they could do. I think that they did well with the tools that they had. They used their height and their athleticism and the crowd and the fact that the referee wasn't calling any fouls. They used their physicality to the best of their ability. And I thought Arsenal really dealt with it well. Like, we were under no threat whatsoever. I think when you look at the score line, it's like, oh, Luton were doing all these things. They weren't. They had 7 touches in our box, and we just didn't defend those corners well. Raya was awful, so beyond that, they didn't do anything. But I thought we were actually pretty good. We weren't as good as we were against Wolves, but you're not always going to play like that. I think this idea that like every single game is going to be Arsenal just, beating up on teams 4-5-0 or whatever. And like, it's just that's so unrealistic. Nobody's doing that. Not Liverpool, not Man City, not everybody. Every single game is difficult, no matter who you're playing, right? And so I think we had our games of like where it was kind of like easier. Burnley at home, Sheffield at home, Wolves at home for the most part. But when you go away from home to these teams like Luton Town, where they play basically like Stoke, and it kind of feels like Everton away, like these types of venues, it's fucking hard, So I think our team actually played really well. I thought our front three, especially Saka and Jesus, were quite good. And so it's a shame that Raya's performance is, I feel like, tainting the performances of others, because they were actually pretty good on the night, to be fair. You know, on Diwali says, in my opinion, it's still papers over the cracks. We can't keep having these types of performances. It's not sustainable. I feel come Villa this weekend will be a huge test. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out if I feel like we're papering over the cracks with our performances. Like, we've had this one that was close. Games against the big six are always going to be close. A lot of our games have been pretty routine. So I think this idea that every single game should just be smooth sailing. And like, if you have games that end up being a lot more like this one, that we're not performing well as a team, like, I do think we have unrealistic expectations of what it's going to be like this season, like getting points. I do think that we think, well, we're the better team, so we should sit up at the halfway line and win every single game 3-0. I don't think we're having a lot of these performances. I think every game is different. This was nothing like Brentford. It wasn't. Brentford, we had to break them down. They were in a mean, nasty block, and we finally broke through at the end of the game. We were really good against Wolves, really good against Lons. Like, I really think like people are overreacting a little bit. Every single game is not going to be easy. Easy says Havertz's ability to play as a striker when he goes forward helps Jesus play as a number 10, which suits him more. Lady says, what cracks did this performance paper over? Again, I just feel like we have such a like it's the same reason the way that people are reacting to our performances is the same reason why people thought we could go up to Luton and fully rotate. The Premier League is not an easy place to be. There's a reason why we're still top, like really close to the top of like clean sheets in the Premier League, but people seem to feel like we're not getting enough clean sheets. Nobody is getting a lot of clean sheets. We're getting the most still, like us in Newcastle. So this performance was really our goalkeeper shitting the bed. Really. Brentford didn't get any chances against us. Wolves didn't really create anything against us. Like, we're not really papering over the cracks. I think sometimes also I think the media painting it as though like we're having all these late winter close games. We don't. Like, think about our games, you guys. Not every single game has been like this. Trini says, how do we deal with the fixture congestion and injuries? Arteta needs to call on 1 or 2 of the academy players. Will Walters, for example, we can run the first 14 players into the ground. Well, you have to get to the January break. I think we have like a 2-week break or something in January. So really, it's just trying to get to there. And we're about a week into December. all of these players are going to have to play loads of minutes. That's just the reality. We're not going to get away from it. I don't think anybody has the luxury of just having like 25 players that you can always rotate. Some players are going to, like, the core nucleus of your team is going to have to play every 3 days at a very high quality. So we have to just be okay with it, and still get results. Which we have been doing this season. We've done the injuries and every 3 days, and we've been able to get through it. So I think it's just a matter of just realizing that this is the reality now. Like, we're not going to have a week between every single game. We're not going to have 6, 7 guys on the bench just ready to come on fresh. Like, everybody's dealing with injuries, fixture congestion. Arsenal are no different. I think the only problem that you have now is that, you have to figure out, defensively what we're going to do, because we are like one injury away in that department. Attack wise, I think we're fine. Midfield, we're fine right now, but defense, there needs to be somebody that's maybe integrated in. So maybe you look at Rule Walters, but really in the January window, they need to go bring in a defender. But Arsenal are no different than anybody else. We have got to, I think, get to the point where we realize that there's not going to be any point in the season where we're going to have our full team. We're going to go through injury cycles the entire season. Once it feels like everybody's back, more people will get injured. So it's up to the team to step up to the plate. There's no perfect settings or no, wrapping people in cotton wool and stuff. The good thing is that we allowed ourselves to like get at least one day of rest, because we did really well in the Champions League group. So we can fully rotate against PSV and it not cost us anything. But, this is just the league and how it goes. If you're going to be one of the elite sides at the top of the tree, you're dealing with injuries. You're dealing with, dips in form. You're dealing with multiple games a week, and your main guys are going to be playing every single game. On the volley says here, our defensive structure was all over the place and no communication at all. They created less than a goal in XG. Like, it was really Raya. Like, our defensive structure was fine. Like, Raya didn't claim the second one, and he let the other one go like through his legs. Like, it really, defensively, we were not poor. I think people are trying to find something to make it other than just Raya having a really poor game, but that's really what it was, to be honest. Zich says this is one of the first times we let anyone score 3 against us. And again, it was mostly due to not Luton doing anything special. Raya shit the bed, Michael says, what cracks are we papering over? Luton had 6 shots, 4 on target, 33% possession, and we scored 4. I'm trying to understand why people feel like it's more than just a really bad performance from our goalkeeper. Here to there says, outside of Raya yesterday, if we perform like that, like we have the last 3 matches, we'll win over 90 points and go deep in the UCL. We're turning a corner. Ocampo says we controlled everything yesterday. It was just 2 massive howlers. I agree. Rashab says, I'm not going to lie, with Tommy injured, we're finished in defense. The one game he's not involved in, we concede 3. Tommy would not allow Barkley to get a shot off. Yeah, I mean, I still don't know if it's about Tommy not being there. It really was Raya, you guys. Like, as much as I know we're trying to make it other things, it really was just even with Ben White not defending that really well, the ball went straight to him. It went straight to him. It was a weak shot. It was one of those ones where it's just like any like decent goalkeeper should be saving that. So, like, yeah, of course, like I miss Tommy and stuff, but they didn't really do anything. I'm finding it hard to connect this, like, it's because we didn't have Tommy. It was because our defense was terrible. It was because of this. Like, literally, Raya was an enemy of progress. Like, he has to hold his head in shame. That was this whole, like, it was all on him, like, on period. The first goal, though, I will say that was Gabriel Jesus. Like, it was kind of similar to the goal against what Sevilla scored on the corner. He didn't defend it properly. Like, he didn't actually mark his man, but the second 2, those are all on Raya. Those are all on Raya. I'm so sorry. Kid Kaka says, if Arteta is not going to Rambo and is adamant on an upgrade on him, I'd rather we sell Ramsdale and not trigger the buy option of Raya and go get Magnan. Magnan is, I've never seen an injury-prone goalkeeper in my life, so spending 60 million on a guy that can't stay fit feels like you're setting yourself up for failure. Arnolito says, and we're doing this with key injuries throughout. John says it's 3-3, 4-3, 3-2 games that are becoming normal in the EPL nowadays. You really can't judge your defense in those kind of games per se. I don't think we actually watch other teams play. Like, I think it's like, well, we're Arsenal and we want to win the league. So every game has to be an easy 3-0, or else we're in like some sort of catastrophe, or, it's the end of the world. Or are you guys not watching Liverpool and Man City play? They are dropping points. Liverpool did not beat Luton. It's they barely beat Fulham at home 4-3. So everybody is having games like this. It's we have actually, I think, done well to keep most of our games from becoming game of the season type of games. Because we've controlled them and we've pretty much just got taken care of business pretty professionally. This is the first time this season where I felt like it was like super unprofessional performance, and mostly due to one person. So I don't think this is like the worst thing in the world. Do you know what I mean? Ocampo says is winning ugly a new thing because it's always been done by title winners. Um, I think Arsenal fans are just very anxious, about everything. It's like when we're defending well, but our attack is not clicking, it's the end of the world. It's when our a defense gives up a couple of goals, but our attack is going well, it's the end of the world. If we don't win every single game 3-0, it's the end of the world. Everything is, catastrophe. And I get like there's a lot of anxiety off of the back of last season, but when you look at everybody else, you can see that this is pretty analogous for everybody else. Like, and we're 5 points clear. So what does that tell you? Um, to me, it's just you can't have one person making two individual errors like that in a game. Like, it's unacceptable for Raya to make those mistakes. And again, it's coloring everybody else's performance. But I think if you rewatch the game back, we were pretty much in control. They were kicking the shit out of us. We went into halftime 2-1 up. We came out in the second half a little bit sloppy. They evened the game up, and then they scored another one right after. And then from pretty much that moment on, we battered them, like we should have done from the beginning. You know, Yo-Yo says the season always hinged for me on Arteta's improvement and fully utilizing the squad. Two A sounds, they're changing between Kai and just is perfect, especially when Rice plat up as the 8. That's why we need Partey or a new 6 or 8. They're changing between Kai and Jesus is perfect, especially when Rice plays up as the 8. That's why we need Partey or a new number 6. CE says, damn, you are alive. What time is it in LA? The work rate is tremendous. Guys, I did the podcast for Forever Arsenal, and we started that at like midnight. And then I was like, well, I might as well just go live instead of like recording something. And then after this, I'm going to sleep it for the rest of the day. Like Michael says, we are better be talking to a defender as we speak to sign on January 1st. We're so close to relying on Cedric. We need a freaking defender, man. Let's see. John says Raya is a short man. Y'all remember the Newcastle goal? He was inches away from the ball. Same yesterday. What do you guys think about that? Do you think it's just like Raya is a lot of it is because he's just not tall? I think the short goalkeeper thing always was a little bit like, okay, that leaves him susceptible to a lot of different things. He's usually really good at claiming crosses and things like that, but it seems like he's really struggled to do that at Arsenal. Like the Newcastle goal, the punch against Sevilla, these situations here, it does feel like him being short is kind of like an issue, So I wanted to know what you guys were thinking about that. Like, if Arsenal have already kind of decided that they're going to buy this guy, which they've already kind of said, like, I think it's done, you guys. I really don't think there's any way that Raya doesn't become a permanent signing for Arsenal at this stage. So what do you do when you're banking on a goalkeeper that's like 5'9", 5'8", or 5'10", or something like that? How do we bank on that? It's it's a weird one, because he was like the fourth best goalkeeper last season. We know he's a good goalkeeper. I think a lot of people felt like he was a good goalkeeper before he came to Arsenal. Now he just can't seem to put in a run of games, like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games without a mistake. And he's making a lot of the same mistakes that I kind of saw from Ramsdale, but they're at like a clip that's very you cannot have it. Like, you cannot have where I can name 5 or 6 off of the top of my head where I'm like, you've only been playing consistently for like 11, 12 maybe games or something like that, and you could just name so many. And some of them are because he's short, but equally it's like, you know, you can't you can't change him from being short, so he needs to come out and claim those crosses. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's such a I just yeah, it's this debate is going to rage on for the entire season. And I feel like it's just not something that a team that's trying to fight for the title needs to be talking about every single week. Now, inside the dressing room, they're probably not talking about it, but I feel like the overall conversation around Arsenal is either Kai Havertz or Raya Ramsdale. And it's tiring. Like, the entire season has kind of been like every single game, like, oh my God, Raya was terrible. Ramsdale was terrible. Raya was terrible. Raya was terrible. Ramsdale was terrible. Like, we're not really getting any good goalkeeper performances from our two goalkeepers right now. And I just wonder if it's because, like, the way that this was done really didn't allow for like a seamless transition for Raya, and now he's kind of like in his head and fucking up. And then because maybe he feels like he's gotten something that he hasn't deserved. That can sometimes be a thing. It's like, I've been put into this position, but everybody feels like the guy that had the position before didn't deserve to be dropped. And then you have Ramsdale, like, every time Raya makes a mistake, they're panning over to Ramsdale, showing Ramsdale. Then when Ramsdale plays, he's making mistakes, then they're panning over to Raya. It's so tiring at this point that I just want them to move Ramsdale on so that at least that part is over. But Arsenal want to keep the circus going and keep him until the end of the season. And so we're just going to consistently be talking about this shit. Like, it's just not something that I want to talk about anymore, but we have to. Arsenic says instant reaction is a terrible way to analyze. Here to there says, have to disagree, Jess. You see the emotion after Ramsdale's last claim versus Brentford. The dressing room talks about it. On the volley says, remember keepers were charged. Remember keepers will be charged for that one calamity that happens longer than the match-winning save they make. Hillary says, if Ramsdale is not English, we wouldn't be talking about it every day. I agree with that. Zitch says, Raya is 6 feet tall. You wouldn't know it. Alistair Ben says, I'm convinced Raya will come good. This time next year, we'll be talking about how good he is if I think he will improve on when Ramsdale is gone. It's interesting because, like, I did think he had put in like 2 or 3 really good performances in a row. Like, he was good against like Lawns. He was good against Wolves. He was good against Burnley. And it just, Luton, I don't know if it was just like the environment or what, but this is not going to be the first time. Like, every single game in the run-in is going to feel like Luton away and worse. The fire is going to be so hot, you know? So he needs to get used to being in situations where he's expected to perform and it really matters, because they're going to talk about your performances for the next week. At Arsenal. At Brentford, you can get away with that shit. Nobody cares. But at Arsenal, it matters, so he really needs to get used to being in the spotlight, the lights on him bright, away from home in these difficult venues and shit like that, because he struggled in the bigger games and the games where we were under more pressure. And the weird thing is we weren't even under pressure against Luton. They had a corner, they had a corner. You caused the issue, it's crazy. Aha says, who would you start in goal on Sunday? Raya. I don't think there's any reason to bring Ramsdale back in, to be honest. Justa J says he's 6 foot, but that's short for a goalkeeper. He needs to be much better. You can't let that be your floor. I'll give him the season to see how much he unravels, to fully judge Raya. I agree. Lady says, I think just like any other player, Raya needs time to settle and get used to all the pressure and being at Arsenal. The hope is that his mistakes doesn't cost us, and they haven't so far. He got lucky. Like, I think very similarly to Ramsdale against Brentford, he got lucky that his team kind of bailed him out. So no, it's not really costing us right now. I mean, I know some people said that it was Newcastle was his fault and so was Chelsea. I think that's a little harsh, the Newcastle goal being just his fault. He could do better. But so far, it hasn't really cost us as much as it could, but we know once we get into the run in, every individual error you make is going to cost us like almost 3 times over. That's how it was last season. Ramsdale's one mistake against Southampton cost us almost 3 times over. Saka missing the penalty 3 times over. So from now until then, he really needs to nip this stuff in the bud, because it may not cost us now, but it will cost us then. We know it. We know it. It's how it happens. Once the fire gets hotter, like every little thing that you do becomes 3 times as bad, during that time. So he has time to figure it out. I don't think that we're going to see Ramsdale come in. But at the same time, he's just not covering himself in glory, you know, not when he makes this frequent of mistakes. Um, Aha says positives from yesterday: better in attack, bailed out our defense keeper for once. Havertz hitting some form and getting goals. Saka hitting form. Rice consistent. It's such a freaking like disappointment that I feel like some of the performances from yesterday are going under the radar because people are so like, oh my God, our defense was terrible. Oh my God, we were awful. It was Luton. Because I thought Saka freaking cooked, you guys. I thought Saka was so good yesterday. I'll be so honest with you guys. I thought Saka was really good. I thought Jesus was on smoke. And again, like Kai was good, Rice was good, Martinelli, but I also think he got injured. And then you had Odegaard in those last like 30 minutes, and he was fantastic in that time. I did see like, I'll pull it up right now. Some of the stats from yesterday. Let's see if I can find it. Let's see if I can find it. For you guys that are like, what time is it? It's like, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you guys. But I mean, I'm feeling okay because, I was already kind of like awake or whatever. But once I go to bed, y'all, that's going to be it. You guys are not going to hear from me for a couple of hours. Okay. But you guys know I love you. I'm just looking and see where I sent this info. Where did I send it? It was about Odegaard and all that other stuff. Just talk amongst yourselves while I figure this out. I have so many chats on WhatsApp. I sent like all this different stuff to different people, and now I can't remember. Here it is. So Odegaard yesterday had 9 progressive passes, 9 deep completions, 7 passes into the box, 5 key passes, and his goal probability added passing was 0.69. That's a really and he was clear of everybody else like by a country mile. So remember when we were talking about in the instant reaction, I was like, I'm not sure if Odegaard had a good game or not. I do think when the game was more contested, he struggled a little bit to win his duels. But when we were going forward and we were trying to like break them down and score goals, he was actually really good, and he got an assist. The ratings from yesterday on like SofaScore and all that type of stuff was really, really good. I mean, it really told a story that everybody was kind of good. Everybody was good except for Raya, basically. he really shat the bed. Like he'll be having nightmares about that performance. I'm just pulling something up so I can show it to you guys. I love this team. Who else thinks this team is going to kill you? Sometimes I just think to myself, I'm like, this team is going to kill me. Seriously. The whole time that game was going on, I was just like, they just want to kill me, don't they? Here we go. So, look at that. Listen. Listen, as mad as people are about that game, look at that. It wasn't our attack at all. Our attack was great. We were good. Saka was amazing. Jesus was fantastic. Kai Havertz cooked. Rice cooked. Odegaard cooked. It was just Raya. It really, really was. I'm so mad that these performances are going to go under the radar because of one person's like bad mistakes. But yeah, like just seeing this is just like, wow, like we really were good, and like we were good for it. Like I said, we almost had 3 point, like we were almost at 3 XG. So we really were a lot better attacking wise than I think people made it out to seem. I'm I don't really think we struggled to break them down or anything like that. It was just we kept chucking the ball into the back of our own net, you know? Jacob says Martinelli was the most quiet attacker. He was. Arsenic says, chat, all the haters could fall to was the goalkeeper agenda after we clinched it with Rice. Alistair Ben says, I hope Luton stay up because that atmosphere last night sounded brilliant on the TV. Their fans did not stop singing a proper old school ground like the Den. I bet the pie and Bovril. I bet they even have pie and Bovril. I don't know what that is, but yeah, I don't know what that is, but it was like an old school ground. Like you could tell that like they were really up for it. And you know, I think again, like it wasn't that I thought Luton were bad. I actually thought like they probably played to the best of their abilities on the day and they scored 3 goals against us. You know what I mean? Um, they were good for them, you know what I mean? If that makes sense. Um, they did the typical thing that you do when you can't keep up with the team footballing wise, you kick them. You know, you kick them, you play on the environment, you play on the crowd, you know, you try to win set pieces, you try to score your set pieces. They did all the things that like a typical team like that would do. And Arsenal just had to persevere beyond it. I think they'll take points off of quite a few of the bigger teams playing like that because it's not easy, you know. Aha says, Jess, would it be an overstatement to say that yesterday was our hardest game of the season? We made it hard for ourselves, but they challenged us a lot physically. Yeah, it was. I think it was one of our more difficult games just because the environment, the closeness of the pitch. Like again, nobody's really slapping Luton like at all. Like when I went through their results, I was like, yeah, this is going to be like a 1 goal game. Like whoever wins is going to win by 1 goal. I didn't think it was going to be 4-3, but I definitely thought like a 2-1 was on the cards, maybe a 1-0. But they're that is a difficult place to go to. It did remind me of like all the times we went to Everton or like Burnley when we went to Turf Moor. It just reminded me of that, you know, under the lights, you know, getting kicked around, you know, things like that, them winning set pieces, scoring off of set pieces. So yeah, it was a hard one, I think, but we got beyond it, you know, we got beyond it, you know, so yeah. And for people that are saying that Chelsea slapped Luton, that was at home, you know, that they slapped Luton. We're talking about at Luton. Like when Luton come to the Emirates, they're gonna get dealt with, you know. So let's not be disingenuous here. Tawanda says after yesterday's game, I want Luton relegated. Here, here. Yo-Yo says Luton forced Arsenal. To be honest, I thoroughly enjoyed the game as a football fan first and foremost. Great clash of styles. Felt like a cup tie. Alistair Ben says pie and Beauville is what they used to serve at football and still do in lower league grounds. Is it a pie? Like an actual pie, like with meat in it or something? You guys know I don't eat I don't eat like chicken or anything like that. Like no chicken, no pork, no beef. So it's not something that I would eat. I'm a pescatarian, so yeah. But it sounds interesting. You know, Sib says the goals Luton scored were freak goals, in my opinion. Luton won't play that well against their next 5 teams they face. They definitely put a lot into that game, which doesn't bode well for the weekend when they play against Manchester City, does it? John says we cannot ignore the obvious penalty, and Mikel Arteta getting a card is so suspicious. I'm starting to believe there's an agenda against Arsenal. Listen, I do think we had 2 penalty shouts, and the one against Gabriel was definitely a penalty in my opinion. I think the idea that you can just pull somebody down in the box like that is only something that Arsenal don't seem to get. We don't seem to get those calls. And I actually thought like in general the referee allowed us to get kicked quite a bit. And he just like Gabriel Jesus was not getting half the calls that he probably should have on the day. And then for them to give Mikel Arteta a yellow for just like barely stepping onto the pitch and when we were celebrating the goal, I think was just they had decided that they wanted to give him a yellow. I've told you guys before that I believe Mikel Arteta and Arsenal are on the bulletin board for PGMOL. They're always everything that they do in terms of like refereeing abuse, and the way that the managers deal with the fourth official and all that is all based around feeling like Arsenal are doing something to them, and so they overreact every single time that Arsenal do normal things that everybody else would do. If that was De Zerbi, Klopp, anybody, nobody would have got a yellow card. But they also knew that Arteta was on the edges of a ban too, or suspension. So fuck them. It's just the typical bullshit all the time. Um, it's like just sucking the joy. Like the next time somebody celebrates a goal, I want to see the manager get a yellow card, if they even step foot on the pitch. I've seen Klopp do that so many times and not get shit. So it's the typical stuff. Um, Tim's King says, haha, Arteta gets third yellow card. He will not be in the bench against Villa. And the corruption continues. They're doing everything to destroy the club. England has always disliked Arsenal. But I think that like Arsenal should use this to galvanize themselves. I think, you can use this to your advantage and say, we're going to win this for Mikel. I think the one time Mikel wasn't on the bench or on the touchline, we did okay. We had to play against Manchester City. Albeit I think he was like, was he dealing with COVID or he was ill or something like that? So we didn't win, but I think it should galvanize us. I think it should be something that they use as like, they're against us, back against the wall kind of thing, So I'm not too worried about it, but they were always going to give him that yellow card, and they were going to do it ahead of a game that was going to be a big clash. Like, you know what I mean? Just It's just nonsense. Like, it really is. Like, the threshold for Arsenal is very, very low. It's like anything that's like normal. Like, we get a yellow for the first like cynical foul we do, yellow right off the bat, but everybody else can foul, 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 get away with it. Some of the way that people handle Gabriel Jesus, if Saliba or Gabriel did that, they would be in the book right away. So it's, for me, it's just like, it's a nonsense. Um, Harold says, Odegaard really had good stats. Look at fan channels. It sounded like he was shite. Lee has fuming among others. There are biases towards certain teams and certain refs. I mean, you watch with your eyes. I think some people, like, if you already don't like Odegaard, if he doesn't have a game like he did against Wolves, you're just gonna say it was shit. So I think some people decided that Odegaard's not good enough, Havertz not good enough, and so even if they play well, you'll figure out a way to make it a negative. Like Lee has figured out a way where he is justified not celebrating Kai Havertz's goal. So even if Kai Havertz comes good and he's playing really well, he'll still hate him and try to figure out a way to make him, to make his point or justify him being unnecessarily negative about our players. So, it is what it is. Like, some people that's just the way that they are. You watch the game for yourself. I do think agendas run wild sometimes. Like, if you don't like a player, you will find any way to make their performances poor, or just not even talk about them. A lot of people won't even mention Kai because of the things that were said about him earlier on in the season. So I don't really worry about that kind of stuff. Agendas run all the time. Um, it's just a matter of, if you believe them or not. So, like, half of this is just agenda and opinion. And I feel like when you have player FC agendas against players, agendas against managers and stuff, it could be profitable for you. So I can see why people do it. It's just not the way that I do shit. I can't do it. I want to feel like, even if I didn't love the signing of Kai Havertz, I want to always feel like if he comes good, that I was on the right side of things. And yeah, I wouldn't want to sit there and every time he scores have to pretend like I'm mad and like it's for the good of the club. Like, be fucking for real. Like, it's not. Um, the Arsenal perspective says, so will Arteta miss the Villa game from the sidelines? Yes. Yo-Yo says he got a yellow for celebrating. There's no pleasing some people. Dewanda says everyone hates Arsenal. They didn't expect us to be first again and doing bits in Europe. There's always an excuse to dismiss Arsenal. Yeah, I mean, if you're defensively good, the attack, they hate the attack. It's like there's always something going on. Like, there's always something to pick at. And I think that's why, like, some Arsenal fans also, they start to pick up on that shit too. That it's like, if the media is saying that we're not good, then we must not be. And I'm just like, look with your eyes. Like, look where we are on the table. How do you feel? Do you feel like we're terrible? Do you feel like we're on the edges of doing this? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's up to the media to cause mess and to cause drama. Like, that is their game. Like, they have to figure out a way to make it can't just be Arsenal are playing well. It has to be, there always has to be an under story, an under thing, so they're getting their way right now. But I think Arsenal fans, we have to like actually look at it and be like, how do you feel about the way that we're playing? How do you feel? Do you think that this team doesn't have goals in it? When they were saying that they didn't feel like Arsenal were scoring enough goals and the attack was this and that, I'm like, well, yeah, well, you did see this team score goals last season. So where is once they start clicking, they're going to be scary. It was always painted in a negative light. So how do you feel about things? Not necessarily how the media feels. It's on their agenda to make us look bad. Do you know what I mean? But in terms of like, I mean, rivals and all that kind of stuff, they hate us because, that's just what rivalry is. Here to there says people need to accept Odegaard will not have to get close to 15 non-penalty goals this year. His role is much different, but he plays well for us in the new role. He's still going to score quite a few goals though, but I do understand like he's never going to do that same season again. That was unprecedented. Everything was going in. Zitch says, did De Zerbi ever get punishment for saying he doesn't like the referees? No. P. Trim says, we get a bump from that Arteta benching. Roscoe says, AirPod Albert will pull through for us. John says, a captain expectation has to be higher than others. Yeah, the expectation has to be higher, but equally, like, I do think that some of it is like very over the top. OTT. I think some people really have to take some accountability and be like, is Odegaard actually not playing well? Or am I just mad that he didn't score a couple of goals against Man City a year ago? Because I feel like if he doesn't score against Man City, because that's the only top 6 club he hasn't scored against, then he's, no matter what he does, even when he plays well in games that are not big 6 games, people try to find a reason why that's not good enough. Like people try to disregard his contribution against Wolves because it wasn't a big 6 game. Who does that? That doesn't make any sense. These games are just as important as the top 6 games. You play more of the games against Wolves than you do against top 6 games. So I do feel like the narrative on Odegaard is more built on insecurity, not wanting him from the beginning and wanting Madison, listening to Lee Gunner and being unnecessarily harsh. Like a lot of teams would want a player like Odegaard in their team. Is he like the best captain's material? Probably not, but he stepped in and did a good job for now. That'll eventually be Rice. I know we all kind of like agree on that. So yeah, I think the analysis on Odegaard is mostly based on people. I don't know. It feels like there's a lot of insecurity around Odegaard for some reason. I don't understand why. Very strange. Blank Face Killa says he did big up Kai for once, but only to spite Odegaard. Exactly. It's all about agenda. All about agenda. John says he is the captain. Expectations. I'm not saying the expectations are even low for Odegaard. They're very high. But some of the times, like when people say, like when people were saying that he was terrible against Brentford, he really wasn't. But agenda's got to agenda. Duke Thomas says buzzing from beating Luton, a team with 9 points out of 15 games. Yep, last minute winners always hit different. So yeah, still buzzing from it. Tawanda says Lee and Northside are funny guys. Arsenic says people haven't been this good since the mid 2000s. Only way to forward is to support Teta blindly. Players' biases are trivial in front of major goals. Only as the day says Odegaard is world-class fans saying he's not, don't know anything about football. Alistair says Kai is definitely looking like he's enjoying playing at the moment. He was man of the match yesterday. I thought he was really, really good. Trini says that large part of why Arsenal social media fan base is seen as toxic. It's almost like they are happy that their channels do better when Arsenal lose. Here to there says agreed. Odegaard is one of the best 20 players in the world and a top professional. Man United would kill to have someone of his character. Our Yo-Yo says opinion is one thing since it's a part full of it. However, agendas are what drives stupid scenes where fans turn on Xhaka and Abui in the stadiums. I don't like agendas because I just feel like unless they're fun agendas, because I think agendas should never be taken seriously. Like sometimes I have an agenda against Suarez, like Cedric, but it's not serious, to the point where it's like I'm actively working against that player. And even when they play well, I won't admit it. Even when, I've been proven wrong, I won't say it. Like, that becomes tiring, pitting players up against each other. That's how you had this weird subsection of fans that hated Saka because they wanted Pepe out there, because Pepe was the player that Arteta wasn't playing, you know? And so it's it's just annoying and boring at this point. And I'm not saying that Odegaard always has an amazing game. I'll call it out when I don't think he's had an amazing game. But this idea that he's not one of the top players in the Premier League and he's a liability and we need to move away from him and he's holding Saka back, all that's bullshit. It's all bullshit. It really is. Arsenic says, love the sensible fans here in the chat keep spreading the pro AFC stuff and debunking all the hater theories. CE says, I've said it before. We are our own worst enemies. People forget players are humans. And just like we do, they have dips acting unhappy when players of ours are doing well. It's ridiculous. I don't know if you guys watch on The Athletic, the Jorginho podcast that they did. It's really, really good. Some people, oh, well, he shouldn't be talking. He wasn't really talking about Arsenal and title race and stuff like that. He was just talking about his career. And he kind of spoke about like what his mindset is when he comes into a different, into a different team. And every team he's gone to, he hasn't been well received, and how he perseveres beyond it, and how every mistake that you make, even though from their perspective, it's something that the team and the club can move on from online and within like the fan base and stuff, it's like the end of the world. Because when he makes a mistake, it's like his family is in jeopardy, because they're going to message his family. They're going to, DM them and say nasty things. They're afraid for them in the stadium because fans can get really stupid. So I like that perspective too, because it's like everybody makes mistakes. I think it's the frequency in which you make mistakes that becomes hard to take. But sometimes when a player makes a mistake, it's like it is the end of the world. And I remember when Jorginho made the mistake against Spurs, I was furious, furious. But he turned right around and had like a man of the match performance against Brentford. And so I can accept that. Players are going to make mistakes, but I feel like depending on who it is, the mistake is like life or death. Do you know what I mean? It's like we cannot let go of it, and we're going to go to like as far as we can to like destroy them. And I'm not into that shit. I'm like, just let them, like everybody makes mistakes. They're not going to be perfect. The expectation that our players are going to be perfect all the time. I feel like, do you expect yourself to be perfect all the time? Do you keep that same energy with yourself? I'm sure you don't. Benny says Liverpool drew with Luton. Why would we not be buzzing, especially in the matter of the victory? Make football fun again. Make football fun again. I think this whole like, oh, you shouldn't be celebrating a win because it's against Luton. Oh, you shouldn't be celebrating a win because Luton and like, it's not like we won the Champions League. I feel like people are trying to make it seem like we're making it seem like we won the Champions League by beating Luton. But I remember after Liverpool beat Fulham, for the next 2 days, all I saw was compilations of Trent, compilations of all their goals, all this content on their celebrations. And I didn't even hate on it because I'm like, listen, that was such a fantastic game and a good way to come back, after being down 3-2. But when it comes to Arsenal, sometimes it's like everything that we do is so hyper criticized, when it's like, how are you expected not to celebrate? First of all, it's not even 24 hours since that game happened, but not to celebrate a game like that, where you come back and you win in the last seconds of the game, and your £100 million signing is the one who does it. Like, bring back fun again. Seriously. Like, it's like almost like when we celebrated the Community Shield and people try to make it seem like we thought it was the Champions League. Yet and still, when they scored their goal, Pep and Man City, Pep celebrated like he had really won something, because they thought they had won that game. And their players were celebrating like it was a game in the Champions League, you know? But Arsenal are so hyper criticized for absolutely everything. Spurs were celebrating draws, and so were Chelsea, celebrating draws against top 6 opposition. But we can't celebrate an actual win. Get off it. Make football fun again, where fans are not criticized for celebrating their team winning. Seriously, it's so lame now. El Dennis says, I actually love the you against the world feeling. It brings more passion to the players. Um, I also want to bring up the fact that, like, not to be negative or anything like that, but Arsenal being top of the table for individual errors leading to goals, I think, is our main issue and will always continue to be our main issue. I think people focus on the amount of goals that we score and injuries and things like that, but it's really not that. Our biggest issue is that we can't keep the ball out of we can't not hurt ourselves. Like, that's really our main issue. Every season comes down to individual errors, I think. And of course, the individual errors become more as the season goes on and the pressure starts to ramp up and we get a couple of injuries, those individual errors become more frequent. But it really, we have benefited the most from capitalizing on other people's individual errors, but we've also given away quite a few goals on our own doing that. And until Arsenal nip that out, I think we're always going to be susceptible to that meme of Arsenal hitting Arsenal over the head. We're our own worst enemy in that regard. So, um, what Raya needs to get his shit together. Zinchenko, stop fucking around. Because those are going to end up costing us in the end. They really are, and that's my main concern about Arsenal right now. Is not the goal scoring, not our defensive record, not our depth, none of that shit. All that stuff is, to me, is going to be fine. What I cannot get over is the fact that we cannot not shoot ourselves in the foot. Why we need to go through games without making any mistakes. We really do. Like, and I just don't know what it's going to take. What is it going to take? Brandon, thank you so much for your super chat. Says, first time on this channel. I loved it here. Big up from Memphis, Tennessee. Well, thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you so much for your super chat. I really appreciate it. I hope you're enjoying your day. I'm sure it's kind of early there as well too, but thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate that. Tunchi says, we are Arsenal. Our opponents don't like it when we win. Sir Nicholas says, good morning, Jess in chat. Tawanda says, I'm going to celebrate when Arsenal win games. FYI, Liverpool are behind Arsenal for goals by individual errors by one. Here to there says, it's insane how good our defense is. All Ryan needs to do is be merely competent. Villa Park is massive for him. Mr. Keep Change says, Odie is good. That dude, no new thing has changed his tune. Listen, I don't listen to no new thing. Like, no new thing could literally be a 16-year-old in his mom's basement eating Cheetos. Like, I am pretending to be this tactical god. Like, I'm not going to let him make me believe that Odegaard's not a fantastic player. I think sometimes there's mileage in being on the opposite side of a popular opinion. So if I go online right now and I start saying things like Declan Rice is not really that good, he doesn't do this, he doesn't do that, blah blah blah, and like these are the reasons why, but I use big words, and instead of having like my face on the picture, I put like a picture of, I don't know, Pep, black and white. People will start following me and believing what I'm saying. Like, it's not that hard to play this social media game. It's really not. Benny says, do you think Raya should be dropped? For now, I don't. Sure, we need. Wait. For now, I don't. I'm sure we need. Wait. For now, I don't. Sure, we need. We is inconsistent. He is inconsistent, but he still plays the Arteta way. He did help with some build up with Havertz. I wouldn't drop him. I really wouldn't. I think that he'll play, and he's the number one. And whether I think that I need the mistakes to go away, but I don't feel like bringing Ramsdale back in makes us any better. Ramsdale, the 3 times that he's played since he's been dropped, has not had a really good performance, so maybe you could say Brentford was good, but he still had mistakes on the ball. And he hoofed it long a lot and invited pressure onto us. So yeah, I don't think we have a choice but to continue to play Raya. And I think if you drop Raya, then you have another head case. So, we need to figure out a way to get at least one of our goalkeepers in a good mental state. And right now, the focus needs to be on Raya. Ocampo says, Gabriel Jesus is massive for us. His pressing and awareness up front is so crucial. It's underrated what he does. I agree with that. The thing with Gabriel Jesus is, his main issue is his fitness. It's not even so much like the lack of clinical finishing. When he's fit and fresh, he does score goals. Like, he's never going to be a 25 goal a season striker, but what he does is he opens up the game for everybody else. And so you get the goals naturally anyway. It's just him staying fit. Since he's been here, he's had some injuries, and the replacement that we have doesn't necessarily add the same things. So even Trossard can't do the things that Jesus is doing. So um, it's so important that he stays fit, and he's getting a good run in right now, and he's doing a really good job. So his performance yesterday was outstanding. He really led from the front. He was a nuisance. He got stuck in. He got a goal and an assist. Like, I mean, there's nothing else you really could ask for from your striker, right? And so as long as he stays fit, we're in a really good position. Harrison says, "Morning, Jess, loving all the content." Kasim says, "Just rewatch from the corner goal. Rice was equally culpable as Raya. He let marking that Rice was equally culpable as Raya. He let marking that and let go of him easily." Yeah, I said that. I also thought Rice could have done better there. I don't think he covers himself in glory, and then Raya is all scrambly and shit. So yeah, Rice could definitely do better there as well. Troy Mitchell says keep playing him. Jacob says, "I'm not happy with Ramsdale laughing on the bench. Don't deserve to play." I don't even think we don't even know what Ramsdale was laughing about. I don't know if he was I don't think he was laughing at Raya or anything. I think we have to take into consideration that he's just talking, and, he's talking to other people. And, if he's smiling, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's laughing at Raya or anything. I think they want to paint a picture that Ramsdale's pissed off and he's happy that Raya's making these mistakes. And I don't think either one of them are happy when the opposite are not playing well. I think in an ideal world, they want each other to play well. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't get the feeling that it's like Ramsdale sitting around like, yes, you're doing bad. Like, I really don't think it's that. You know what I mean? But Ramsdale, I don't think he needs to come back in. Gunny says Ramsdale needs to come back in. Um, if you want a shit show, bring Ramsdale right back in, because the thing is like people are like, oh, I feel so sorry for him because Arteta's the reason why he's a head case. I'm like, that also shows that his mentality is not great. If you're dropped and you're not able to come back into the team if Raya is not playing well and you get an opportunity to show that you actually are better than Raya, but you put in a performance like you do against Brentford, you're not my number one anyway. Like, the kind of player that you need is the one that's going to grab the position by the scruff of its neck and say, I'm the number one. I don't think if Allison was dropped, do you think Allison, when he comes back in, is gonna shit the bed the way that Ramsdale did? No. So I think that also showed me that Ramsdale's, mentality is not really there either, because it's like, I know that being dropped is harsh, and like, but this is elite level football. When you're dropped, you have to stay mentally like locked in. You can't just fall apart. And he fell apart, and I don't think he was good at the beginning of the season. I don't think he was good in the run in either. So yeah, if y'all want him back in, you want him back in. But he just, no, for me, it's a no. Jezza says Raya is better than Ramsdale, full stop. Let's stop with this daft non-story hype by Aaron's dad narrative. Here to there says, if Raya fails during Villa Park Anfield run, do we not need to consider a new goalkeeper in January? They won't, though. They've already decided to buy Raya. I think what we need to hope now, like just like with Kai, where people were like, before he started to click, it was, we need to go straight into the January window and buy a replacement. We need a left center mid. Nobody's really saying that anymore because it's starting to click. I think there was never a chance that we were going to spend 65 million on Kai Havertz and in the very next window turn around and buy another player. It's always the case that you're going to give a player at least a season to get their shit together. The idea that we're going to go into the window and replace a Kai or replace a Raya because they're not playing well at the moment is so we need to go into the window and buy a defender. Period, I just don't think I think Arsenal's priority is going to be getting Raya in decent form, Tucci says, y'all are ignoring the fact that we're more resilient than last season. With us now, we can win even in the last second of the game. Arsenic says, it's media mischief, want Ramsdale drama to rile up AFC fans, further create internal conflict. Yeah, I mean, they need to have something to talk about with Arsenal. They need to have something to always fall back on. And unfortunately, because Raya hasn't really settled in, it's still a conversation that they can fall back on because it makes them money to constantly be putting up comparisons between the two of them and having people call up and talk about how they miss Ramsdale and have Ramsdale's dad go on podcasts. And so it's profitable for there to be bullshit going on. Trini says, "Hi Jess. Arsenal's fortunes have changed for the better over the past few seasons. Which single player do you think is the most influential in the rise of the club?" Bukayo Saka. Um, Bukayo Saka, he's been there the whole time, and since the moment that he's gotten into this team, he's been a real bright spot, even when he was playing at left back. I think Saka is like synonymous with the rise of Arsenal. His introduction into the team aligned with us getting into this new era. So for me, it's a lot of it has been Saka. Um, and then I would say Odegaard. Adding Jesus and Zinchenko and Declan Rice. I think to me, those players have changed us in so many ways. I think Jesus and Zinchenko up the technical level. I think Odegaard gave us creativity that we sorely needed. Saka gave us something to hold on to in the dark, in a dark alley. We had something to hold on to and be like, we're going to make it through this. And Declan Rice is a transformative signing. So, but it definitely all started with Saka, in my opinion. And obviously, there's other players that added their thing as well. Saliba, Gabriel, Martinelli. But for me, Odegaard, Saka, Declan Rice, Gabriel Jesus, and Zinchenko have been the most game-changing players for us in different ways. Declan with his mentality, clutch, he just makes us a different team that really looks like they can win something. And I think people underrate how like we went for a top 4 like competing side to a title contending side the minute we got Gabriel Jesus and Zinchenko in this team. And they have flaws? Trust. We know what Zinchenko's flaws are. We know what Gabriel Jesus's flaws are. But let's get it right. Like the level above those two is like elite level. Like they are not scrubs in any way. And I really do think that like they changed a lot for us too. Like I really rate both of them a lot, but I think it has to be Saka. I think it has to be Saka, man. Jacob says Saka, Rice, Saliba, Jesus, most important players. Kenneth says, do play fantasy league. If you do, give me your code. I don't do the fantasy stuff, you guys. I don't be having time. I'd never fix my team in time. Kenneth, I got that one already. CE says, safe to say Tomiyasu. I definitely injured, just he posted up on Insta. So let's talk about that too before we get out of here. Listen, I love Tommy, but this is always the struggle with Tommy, isn't it? He's always injured, and as soon as he becomes a really important part of the fold, he's out, and it's such a shame because it did feel like, there was some good news there because Arteta was like, he should be able to play or be available for the next couple of games. It doesn't look that bad. And then boom, after the game, it's like they release this news that it's going to be a long time. The scans are not good. And Tomiyasu did say on Instagram, I'm sick of being injured, but I feel this is the opportunity to be much stronger. And I'm sure he's sick of being injured because it's not always your fault. Sometimes it's just your makeup. But Arsenal, I don't think they're going to pull the contract or anything like that. But he's just not somebody that I feel like at this stage you can count on as more than like a squad guy. Just because he's not available enough, if that makes sense. So it's really unfortunate. They're saying 4 to 6 weeks. It's going to be 4 to 6 weeks no matter what, because he's going to be injured all the way up into the Asia Cup. And then so probably not until after like January, maybe February, we'll see him. And it sucks. Like it really does. Like that really took the wind out of my sails. Tomiyasu being injured again, because my whole thing this season was if he can maintain his fitness, then he can really start pushing for a bigger role in this team. And he's so useful and so good with both feet and physical and a good 1v1 defender. We lost our best 1v1 defender, besides like Gabriel maybe, because Ben White is not as good of a one defender. We know Zinchenko's not a defender. So in wide areas, if we need a shutdown defender, we don't have it. We don't, and so It's a tough pill to swallow, losing Tomiyasu again, but what can you say? He gets injured so much. Arsenic sorry. Arsenic says Tommy can't play high intensity in the Premier League consistently. Rep 187 says Tommy gets injured every time he plays on the right, but he's fine when he plays on the left. Coincidence? Not sure. I never really noticed that. That's an interesting point. Yo-Yo says we knew before the season who our injury-prone players were. You reinforce the squad to sustain their unavailability. Otherwise, you learn nothing. Justa J says we can't keep using Tommy as a dynamic right back. Every time he plays there, he gets the same calf issues. Running up and down the flanks is killing him. Either he plays as a center back or as a controller left back. And I think that's a really good point that some of you guys are making, that maybe it's where he's playing and he just cannot play like that. It's too much work. And maybe he does have to play on the left back side, or play center back, Philip says Tommy needs to play center back only. DS says, Jess, I think we should play Tommy at left center back. That role is less intense. He plays there for Japan. And it probably, you guys, you're making a really good point. It might just be he's not somebody that can play high intensity up and back, up and back, up and back, Yogesh says, do we need another defender in January? Yes. Yes. I think when you look at the end of our seasons, the last two seasons, when we didn't make top four and we didn't win the league, both of those seasons really capitulated and crumbled off of the back of defensive injuries. We went into very important games with guys like Cedric and Rob Holding playing for us, and Gabrielle and Ben White with half a hamstring. It's just as unsexy as it is, you need your defenders because of the foundation of everything that you do. You can't build up with the defenders if the dynamics of the defense are different. You can't build up the same. Everything is different. So it's a reason why I think a lot of teams with their initial signing, a lot of times ends up being a center back so they can play their way. And your fullbacks are really important too. So I am worried just because I feel like we need another defender, but we have a whole month until we can actually address it. But listen, go give Sporting 50 million for Diamande and end this madness, Ocampo says, what does Kivior not do at left back? I just think he hasn't adapted to the physicality of the league. I think what you saw against Luton is he looked weak, and a little frazzled by maybe the occasion and the intensity of it all. So, he's one of those where either you're going to sink or swim. You kind of need to take your opportunities and, make the most out of it. I don't think he left any of us with like a lot of confidence. Like I wouldn't want to play him at Anfield or Villa Park. So, I don't know. We're going to have to trust Kivior though, too. Like, didn't trust him last season, and it ended up being the case that if maybe we had played him a little bit more, we wouldn't have dropped so many points. So, yeah, Kivior is still, to me, a question mark in terms of like, is he ready to step in, right now and make a difference? But you may not be able to like wait until he's like fully ready to use him, if that makes sense. Now, he doesn't do the Zinchenko things. I think we saw as soon as Zinchenko came on what he adds. And that's why when people talk about Zinchenko like a dog, I'm kind of like, yeah, he makes the mistakes. But like, do you actually like watching Arsenal when he's not on the pitch? Because it stinks, he gets into that midfield and makes shit happen, So that's why Zinchenko is so important. Only as the day says Arsenal. Yeah, Arsenal are targeting Ousmane Diomande. Go get him. Jacob says, I actually rate Kivior. Benny says Kivior is definitely not Zinni. Rashab says, maybe Tommy needs to go to Bayern for his career Bundesliga less intensive. Jacob says, Kivior is ready, but just not at fullback. And maybe that's the thing about playing all these center backs as fullbacks. Like some of them are not going to adapt like Ben White has to the position. Like Ben White is taken to it like a duck to water, and the other ones are having a little bit more of a difficult time. So maybe not everybody can do the center back, fullback role, because they are all center backs, Ben White, Tomiyasu, and Kivior are all center backs, but, maybe not everybody can do it. Here to there says Kivior is a serviceable defender, but doesn't look ready to really add attack yet. F says, I prefer Kivior at center back. Should have played over Holding from the start last season. He's just not comfortable at left back, in my opinion. And Kenneth says Villa to beat City tonight, crossing our fingers. So we'll all be watching that game, and hopefully they get a couple of yellow cards. I think it's like what? It's Kamara and Douglas Luiz and Watkins, I think, that are all on yellows. So, or 4 yellows. So if they get one, they're out for our game, something like that. So we're going to be hoping for that. But at the end of the day, you guys, like, when you win last minute the way that we did, you're always going to have a feeling of like excitement and like, oh my gosh, I want to rewatch that, because that's football. Like, no matter who the opposition is, when you win like that, it feels damn good and it's exciting. And so make football fun again. Like, I'm not going to let rivals make me feel like I can't celebrate a win when they've been celebrating draws. Like, let's be so freaking for real. But, Arsenal do need to cut out the individual errors, where being top of that table is really frustrating when that was kind of our issue last season. It's nice to see the attack clicking. Jesus, fantastic. Saka, fantastic. Kai Havertz coming into his own, and Odegaard looking like himself. So we're in a good space, top of the league, 5 points clear, top of your Champions League group. But, the tasks are going to get tougher. The tests are going to get harder. So hopefully Arsenal have what it takes to make it through. So in terms of content, you guys, just trying to get confirmation of Diluted coming onto the Patreon pod that's going to come out on Friday. Tomorrow, probably going to just do like a morning show, maybe do a live later on in the afternoon, depending on how I feel. But I'm going to go ahead and go to bed now. It is so late. It's late/early. It's 3:00 in the morning, but hopefully the 250 of you guys that are in here enjoyed the show, enjoyed kind of talking about the game a little bit. If you're just joining, you can, continue to watch it or whatever, or maybe start from the beginning. But make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel on your way out. And also comment after, like once the stream is over. That also helps the channel get seen. And like I said, I made an appearance on the Arsenal Forever podcast, so you guys can watch that too. But I really enjoyed chit-chatting with you guys. You're amazing. And I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.